All right, Alan. Hey, I'm really glad to chat with you today. And our goal is just to share some of the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and the opportunities, the insights that you are freely sharing on a regular basis. It's one of the things I respect about you because you're very conscious of others in this space. Welcome to this series, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I've got lots of opinions and I like to share them. So hopefully from time to time they resonate with other people and help people out on their career journey, which I'm excited to talk about.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and kind of what you're working on day to day.
You bet. So Alan Shoebridge, currently I'm the Associate Vice President of National Communication at Providence. Providence is seven state healthcare system. We have about 51 hospitals, 120,000 caregivers, what we call all of our employees. And I've been in the marketing and communication space my whole career, working for health systems and on the health insurance side as well. And I also like to think a lot about kind of mentoring and team performance and career development. I know we're going to talk about things that kind of cross all that space today, but I've been doing that for a while and I just love it.
Let's start there then. Let's start back to when you think back to your early career and you're thinking about some of the skills maybe that at the time didn't feel like make or break, but since then you realize that's something that really helped me move from kind of a tactical leader, from a doer to becoming a strategic leader and somebody who had more responsibilities in the organization. What were some of those skills?
Yeah, well, one right off the top that I think about a lot is being comfortable with public speaking. And I might not sound that revolutionary to people, but if you can't speak up in a meeting, if you can't present a project or a topic or a plan, you cannot grow in most organizations. And so for many years, like I was really nervous. I didn't like speaking up in meetings. I was just afraid of like giving a presentation. And I got kind of thrown in the deep end on something where I had to do that. And it really helped me grow. And I got a lot more comfort in that. And so I think, one piece of advice I give a lot of people looking back on my career is like, if that's not comfortable for you, you really have to build that capability because as a leader, you're going to have to present things. You're going to have to speak up. And if you can't do that, it's going to have a really hard time in your growth. So I even think something like that, which, for some people who are very extroverted might not ever be an issue. But I think a lot of people, might be like me where they're younger, they're getting started in their career and they're kind of afraid to speak up or afraid to present. And you've got to take those opportunities and do it. And I think that's crucial to kind of building like just how you talk about things as a leader as you get more experience. You got to start somewhere. And that's pretty fundamental.
It really is. What were some of those other things that maybe were not as clear? Because that's something that I'm sure just it came up, and you either have to decide, yeah, like I want to take this opportunity or not. Were there any kind of like on the technical side, or just things that they realized at the time like were more helpful than you realized?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing too, and I guess this might be technical, but it's sort of a philosophy too, is that, you know, especially when you're starting out, you're going to get asked to do things you don't know how to do. And you have to say yes to those opportunities, even though they're pretty scary. You're like, maybe it's a technology or you haven't been that experienced with, and you need to figure out quickly how to get experience with it. And I think what I see a lot is, again, younger people, if they don't know how to do something, they might just say, well, ask someone else, ask Jared, he knows how to do this. Well, actually, for you to grow, like you've got to embrace sort of those like challenging and scary things. And for me, one of the first projects I did was, this is going to sound, I hate to date myself too much, but it was sort of an email marketing where our organization hadn't done that before. And, there was a lot of concern from legal and other parts of our organization about, oh, we can't use these email addresses. And my was like, why can't we do that? So again, if you have an idea or someone asks you to pursue something and the path isn't really clear or it's a little bit scary, I think you have to jump on it and figure out what it's going to take to do that, to do the work, get it done well, ask hard questions. But, if you are someone who, again, like if you don't take some chances on, early on doing some things that you don't feel comfortable with, it's really going to, potentially stifle your growth. So it's just another thing. I know it's broad, but I just encourage people, like, you're going to get asked to do scary things you don't understand. Figure out what you need to get it done. Who you need to partner with, who you need to learn from, what technology you need to learn. Like that's going to help you a lot. But if you say no, again, you might not get asked to do it in the future. So embrace that sort of, I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to learn and find out. I've always had that mindset. And I think that's really helps people in their career growth.
Agree, especially in the context of healthcare marketers and communicators today. There's more pressure than ever. There's never not been pressure but there's just more to prove the impact, to prove the value. I am convinced that there are just some in the organizations who aren't going to give enough credit to marketing communications. And you do have to know who those people are and still make the attempt to learn what that value is. What advice do you give to emerging marketers about building credibility? I think when I'm looking at more of like operational or clinical leaders or finance, a CFO who just like wants this super clear line, marketing activity, outcomes, right? Like it should be this super clear thing. And we all know not everything has that. So what's your advice for building that credibility?
Well, I feel like it's really important for people to understand what you do. You know, there's that, I mean, again, maybe a dated reference, but you remember the movie Office Space, where the two guys ask one person, "What do you say you do here?" Right? And if someone's asking you that question, "What do you do here?" Like you've missed an opportunity to educate them previously about what you do. And so, what I recommend is like build those relationships early. Like find those people you're going to be working with 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and talk to them now. Like talk to them now about what you do and why. Because if you get put on the spot later about like, well, can you justify this expense or whatever, you've missed an opportunity to really like have the right discussions ahead of that. So I think it's important to kind of do some like stakeholder mapping in an organization where here's 3 or 4 people that I don't have a relationship with, but maybe I need to because again, we're going to be working down the road. I want them to understand what I do. So I just think the worst position you can be in at any level of your career is for someone to see your name and go, I don't know what that person does. So what you should do is be proactive about like educating the people who matter, your stakeholders, like what you do and why. And I think in terms of like marketing and communication, sometimes it's tactical discussions. Here's why we do these tactics. Here's why we're on these channels. Here's why we market this way. Have those conversations and let them ask questions before you get on the spot to justify something. That's the best way to set yourself up for, long-term success.
So right along with that, then when I look at some of the other things that you and other leaders are just navigating right now, there are a lot of different transformations happening, and they all do relate to like that skill of being able to communicate what your role in that is. But sure, like some of the things that are more obvious or directly connected to marketing, digital transformation, right? Patient outreach, privacy, brand complexity. And then we have things that maybe are just more far reaching or have less to directly do with marketing, but are just as important for marketers and communicators to understand, with staffing shortages, with digital IT investments, with health policy, with work shortages, and so forth, with labor crises. There are so many different things to understand beyond, I think, a core set of marketing and communication
Oh yeah.
skills. So, that there's a mindset around that you've already kind of described, but like how would you describe that mindset? Like for a younger professional in this field to understand how to thrive in this constantly shifting environment.
Well, I think like curiosity is really important. So asking the questions about why the organization works the way it does. Also, I know this could be controversial, but I've always felt that I should be a patient where I get my healthcare. So like I have my primary care at Providence because so often in terms of like past marketing roles, I was told to promote something and I kind of knew as a patient, wait, this might not be ready for prime time because like you're telling me this
Mm.
works well. But when I was at the clinic 3 months ago for my check-in, that's not how we did it. So what's going on? So I do feel like that sort of curiosity of understanding the industry you work in terms of, with healthcare, trying to understand like those patient journeys, things that might not be in your day to day, but trying to understand that, trying to understand how the clinical workflows work with the doctors, what the patient experience is like, all those things, being curious and asking those questions will make you a better healthcare marketer or communicator because when you're asked to promote something, you'll have the right question to answer. And I think when you're in this industry for a while, you learn to ask things like, is there access? What's the patient experience like? How long does it take to get an appointment? Like those are things you just learn over time. But if you're not curious about how the business works, you're never going to be in a position to ask those questions. And those questions are the right questions you should ask before putting any time or effort into doing promotion. And even before you even get a million miles away from the tactics, you need to be able to ask those questions first to really make sure, like, is this the right opportunity we should be pursuing? And that curiosity will help you be able to do that.
So only build on that then, because I do see a lot of younger marketers and communicators kind of miss an opportunity to gain a voice at the table. And it is built on curiosity. It's built on just an awareness, a self-awareness, and organizational awareness. But that isn't easy necessarily, and it doesn't come overnight, I think, to most professionals. How can you build that voice, like get that seat at the table, get that confidence, and what could keep you from reaching that point sooner in your
Yeah.
career?
Well, probably it's a hesitancy. We talk about things like imposter syndrome, like why should I be asking this executive for a meeting, or why should I be, asking for to be included in this meeting? And part of it is sort of recognizing that in yourself and getting over that to some degree. I think it's looking for opportunities where if you have ideas, suggesting them, getting into the right forums. Again, I'll go back to it. It's building relationships. Do that stakeholder mapping in your organization. Find two or three executives that you haven't met that you think it might be good to build a real relationship. Push yourself a little bit. I think, again, when you're starting out, the hesitancy is probably around, I'm not worthy of having a conversation at this level, or, again, why would they want to talk to me? I think you have to get over that, push through it. And even if it's just, I've had meetings too where, and you talked about it, people will make a lot of assumptions about what you do as a marketer, as a communicator. Those assumptions are not always right. In fact, they're often like a mixed bag. Like maybe a few things are correct and some aren't. And so that educational piece, people will appreciate that. Even having a 15, 20, 30-minute meeting with an executive as a meet and greet and explaining a little bit about what you do, asking them what they do, like that goes a long way. So then again, you may have that kind of conversation with someone, and that investment of 30 minutes, well, 6 months down the road, when you have to make a pitch for something or you have to justify something, you've already built a little bit of a relationship. That helps a lot. So I feel like, getting back to your question, it's sort of like recognizing yourself if you're holding yourself back from doing that, because again, you feel like you're not worthy of having a seat at the table or people wouldn't be interested. Just push past that and try to find people who are willing to have those conversations with you. And I think you'll find most people are very willing to do that.
I think so too. That has definitely been my experience. That's pretty unique about this field, about how willing people are to open up and share those types of things. Just a couple things, I guess, as we start to wrap here. If you were mentoring a rising star today, like a rising leader, an emerging leader today in this field, what are some of the habits or relationships that you'd encourage them to prioritize this next year to kind of accelerate their growth?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always good in looking at like a year ahead is to pick some targets of things you want to do. If there are some skills you don't have that you want to master, figuring out what those investments would be. I think that's really good. I mentioned it a couple of times. It could be formal, informal, but I think you need sort of that stakeholder map too of like what relationships do you need to build? Who are you solid with? I always feel like I look across the people I work with on a regular basis and I say, if there's 10 people, I say, hey, these three, we have a great relationship. They understand what I do. These three, they sort of understand. We work together. And then maybe there's four other people like, I just haven't touched in a while, haven't checked in, or maybe I've never had a conversation with them. So thinking like who you work with a lot and making sure you have those good relationships and actually doing a little formal analysis of where things stand. I think that's really good. And then, I always feel too, different organizations are better at this than others. Some people just don't have like a lot of formal plans about the work they do either, right? So that's an opportunity, especially as a younger person. I think you can come in sometimes if you see an opportunity of like, hey, we could use a more formal plan around this work or even the work we do as a team. Don't be afraid to suggest those things. So I think that planful approach to managing your stakeholders, managing your work, if that's not something you're doing right now, I think I would encourage that as sort of like one of the best investments of your time that you can possibly make.
It's funny how things like that just seem so natural and how few people actually do them. I bet if we took a poll, you might not be surprised by the results of how many have an opportunity to grow there with just planning and documenting a little bit more and being a little more strategic with that. And I love that you mentioned like stakeholder relationships
Yeah.
as part of that.
Well, it's very easy to get caught up in tactical stuff, and especially I think when you're a newer leader or someone who's moving in a leadership role, shifting from that tactical mindset to a more strategic mindset is tough sometimes because it does take intentionality and focus and all that. And I think, one thing leaders need to think about too is especially as younger leaders are moving into higher roles of responsibility, remember that you have a team that can do stuff for you. Sometimes people try to take it all on, right? And they're trying to do the tactical stuff and the strategic stuff, and the strategic stuff kind of shifts to the side. Whereas you have to tell yourself constantly, oh, right, I have a team that I can trust with that tactical stuff. So that let me focus a little more on the strategy to give them guidance. So, again, that's something I feel like sometimes newer leaders forget that. And even me, I've been in leadership roles for 15 years or something. Even every once in a while, I'll catch myself doing something and I'll go, wait, there's someone on my team who would knock this out of the park. They're going to do it twice as fast as I am. Why am I not giving them that work? So I think we all can fall into that trap occasionally.
Well said. Alan, anything else we haven't mentioned that you'd like to share with younger leaders in our field?
Well, my one piece of advice, if I really boil it down, is just reminding people that nobody cares about your career as much as you do. So as you're getting into new roles, new jobs, just think about the importance of like building your brand, sharing what you do, and managing those stakeholder relationships. And hopefully you'll work for someone that encourages that. I think most people will. But again, just thinking about the fact that it's important that people understand what you do, take the opportunity to share that information with them. And I think it'll really help you grow. And I, again, always think it's important to make sure you're working for someone who will help your career grow.
Alan, you're not only spot on, you are right on time here at the conclusion of our episode. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Jared. I always enjoy talking with you.